Hey everyone, this is George Karabasis taking classes from Bridge Gap Academy. And in today's lesson, we're going to go through the basics of JavaScript. In the previous lesson, we had a look on why JavaScript is very important and why you should use it to create very cool, dynamic, and interactive websites. But in this case, we're going to have a look on the very basics of JavaScript, and from it, hopefully you're going to have a very basic foundation in JavaScript, which is going to help you to take it to the next level later on. In the past lesson, we went through and built this very basic website by using simple HTML and CSS. We covered the very basics, how to use HTML, how to use CSS in order to change the colors and style the elements in a very nice and organized way. But in this case, we're going to take this website that we built on the previous video and add some JavaScript in it, add some interactivity. In today's lesson, we're going to have a look on how to manipulate elements by using JavaScript. So for example, to change text on the website, and also what happens when you click on a button. When you click on a button, what is going to happen with some elements on the website. And also, we will also use JavaScript to change colors once an action happens. So for example, when you click on a button or you do a certain task. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have the project opened here, and what we need a place to write our JavaScript code. And the way we do this is that we have to create a new file, and I'm going to name it as script.js. You can also name it as main.js, a name which is going to describe what we're going to be doing. In here, I'm going to introduce you to the very first function. And the first function is going to be alert hello world. Now, what I'm expecting right now is to open a window saying hello world. But if I refresh, you notice that nothing's going to happen. Why? Well, because the JavaScript is not connected to our index.html file. Remember, the index.html file contains all the HTML and CSS code for this page. And you cannot read the script.js file, the JavaScript file, because it's not connected to it. So we have to tell it where to find the script.js and run it. Now, we typically introduce all the script files at the very bottom of the website. So the way this works is that we first want to load the HTML, the CSS, and then load the JavaScript. This is good because we want to paint the window with HTML, CSS, and then load the interactivity. This is better for the user because it's going to keep them engaged. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, the way we do this is by writing the script tag. Okay. And inside, we need to use the attribute source, src equals. I'm going to also zoom in a little bit, so it's going to be easier for you to see. Maybe a bit more. And I'm going to type the name of the file inside. So I'm going to do script.js. I will save. Now, if I refresh, I'm expecting the window to show up. Great. So I'm going to press OK in order to exit the window. And let's go ahead and write some code. Okay. Let's go ahead and change the biography to random biography. Okay. So the way we do this, we need to target the element. So we need to target that specific element which says biography. Now let's go on HTML. So I'm just gonna drag the HTML on the side so it will be easier for us to see. I'm gonna unzoom a little bit. Now I'm gonna scroll all the way up and notice that the biography title has the ID of bio. It should be bio title, by the way. It has the ID of bio title. Okay, so what we need to do is to target this element using JavaScript and change the text inside from biography to random biography. Okay, now the way we do this is we're going to do this by typing document. Now, document refers to the entire page right here, the entire page to which the script.js is linked to. Okay. Remember that we have linked JavaScript at the very bottom, so it's going to refer to this entire document. Okay, and then we're going to we need to get the element by its ID. So we're going to say get element by ID. We're going to open brackets, and then we're going to put quotes, and then we're going to paste bio-title. Now, all of these here are elements. So header is an element, nav is an element, UL is an element, li is an element, a is an element. So all HTML tags are read as elements by JavaScript. Okay? So here it says, so this function is going to grab that element right here by its ID. And what we're going to say, we're going to type dot, okay? And we want to access the text content of it. So we're going to say text content, okay? And then we're going to store to it the text that we want to change it for. Well, as we say, we want to change it to random biography. So let's type random biography. Okay, and look at what happens if I refresh. Now, first we're gonna get the alert, and then it's gonna change. And it's gonna be a bit frustrating when we keep refreshing to have the alert to show up all the time. So it's a good idea to comment it. So just gonna comment it out just like that, putting 2 slashes before it, and just gonna comment it. Our comments are gonna be completely ignored. So if we refresh, the alert is gonna stay there, but it's gonna be ignored because it has a comment. Now, it's nice to keep everything organized when you use JavaScript because it can become very complicated very fast. So one way to do this is we're gonna introduce variables. Now, just gonna make this a bit bigger so we can see better. So instead of using a string to equate the text content with, it's a good idea if I could use a variable and then say, for example, biography title, which is going to have this value right here. And then from that, I'm just going to use a variable to store it in here. Now, think of variables as boxes which contain something. They can contain a number, they can contain a text, they can contain true or false. So for example, we can have var number equals to 3. We have a Boolean value. So is it true? Which is not true in this case. You can also say true. We can also have an array. So think of an array, boxes within a box. So they contain multiple things. For example, we have a var colors, and then we can say red, green, blue, purple, yellow, and orange. There are also like other types of variables such as objects, but we're not going to look into those for this lesson because they are a bit more advanced. Okay, so now we can save and refresh, and notice that the title still stays as random biography. So you can store the string on a variable and then use it as many times as you want, instead of having to copy paste the string over and over. Now let's look at a bit more complicated example. So let's see how we can change the background color of all of these projects. But before doing that, it will be a good idea to go and put some width and height on those projects. So let's go on CSS. So let's go on index.html, identify the projects. It looks like they have a class of project. So let's go on CSS, and looks like I don't have them. So I'm just gonna add them right here. So I'm gonna do hashtag projects because again, this is an ID. Then I'm gonna take project. We're just gonna refer to all of these projects. And I'm gonna do I'm gonna give them a height of 50 pixels and a width of 50 pixels. And I'm gonna display them on the same line. So we're gonna do display inline block. Okay. We're gonna refresh. Notice that they are being displayed on the same line. Maybe give them a bit more height and width so the number stays on the same line, and there we go. Great. Okay, now let's go ahead and change the background colors of those, referring to these colors that we have defined on the colors array. Now the way we do this is that we have to target all of these elements one by one. So let's see how we can do this. So we're going to do document get element by class name. So get elements by class name. Remember, this is a class, so we are getting this element by using its class project. Okay, and we need to specify which project, okay, which element containing the class project we want to change. Now let's go ahead and show you exactly what this is gonna return. So we're gonna do alert. Okay, we can refresh and notice that this is an HTML collection, but this is not saying too much for us. Okay, it's not very descriptive. That's why I like, when it comes to debugging, I like using console log, because it's gonna print more details about this function and what it's gonna return. So let's click on inspect element and go to console and refresh, and notice that it's gonna print more stuff in here. So notice it's gonna print, notice when I highlight on those on each project, it's gonna highlight on the appropriate element, on the corresponding element on the page. So as you can see, this is gonna take all the elements with the class of project. Great. Now let's go ahead and see how we can change each element one by one. So I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna comment the comment for now. And I'm gonna do style dot background color, and I'm gonna equate it to the first element of the array. Remember that in arrays, we always begin counting from 0 and not from 1. So 0 is going to refer to red, 1 is going to refer to green, whoops, that meant to be green, not grid, 2 is going to refer to blue, and so on. Now let's see what will happen if we refresh. Now notice that nothing happens, and the reason of that is because we haven't specified which project we want to change. And because this is a list as well, we have to say we want to specify the first project. So we want to change the background. We want to change this background to red of the first project class. So we're going to put 0 here as well. Now let's refresh. And there we go. We get the red. Now what do we do? How do we change the other projects then? Well, the way we do this is by copy paste the entire thing 6 times. And then we're going to change the numbers to, for example, here instead of 1, we're going to say, instead of 0, we're going to say 1, 1 here as well, 2 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this is going to be green because it's the second element, again pointing 1. Third element, blue, purple, yellow, and then orange. Whoops, another typo. Let's refresh. And notice how all the background colors change for all the projects. Now notice something that we did. We had to copy this 6 times. What if you had 10 elements, 100 elements, or 1,000 elements where you wanted to change the background? It's not going to be efficient to write this 1,000 times. So that's why we can use something called a for loop. So a for loop is going to loop through all those elements, and for each element, we're going to change the background color to the corresponding color located on the array. So let's see how we can do this. So we type for, and then we need a variable which is going to increment every time. So it's going to loop through, it's going to do a cycle. So every time it's going to increment. So we do var I equals to 0. At the beginning, we need to start from 0. And then we want to stop as soon as we reach the length of the array. So we need to stop as soon as the I reaches 6. So when I is 6, then it's going to stop. Now the way we do this, we need to get the length of the array. So this is going to print the length of the array, and the length is going to be 6 because there are 6 elements on the array. With a semicolon, and then we want to increment the incrementer. So let's go through this again. So we start at the beginning. That's the base, so we want to start from 0. This indicates for how long the for loop is going to run. And in this case, it's going to run as long as the incrementer is less than the length of the array. So if I is 1, it's going to run the for loop. When it becomes 2, 3, 4, or 5, it's going to still run the for loop. But when it becomes 6, the for loop is going to exit. Okay? And this tells us how you would like to change the incrementer per for loop. And we want to increment it by 1. So we can do this better like this, equals to I plus 1. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and put the project. So we're gonna get the element, okay? And we're gonna say I instead of 0 because I is gonna take all the values from 0 to 5. And then we're gonna do style.background color, the same thing as we did above. Then we're gonna equal to colors. And what do you think we're gonna put here? That's right, we're gonna put I here as well. So it's gonna go from 0 all the way to 5. Now we're gonna remove this. Actually, we're gonna comment this out. Let's refresh, and you see that we get the same result. Okay, great. So let's go through let's go through it again once more. So we start from 0. We start from the very first element. That's the very first. So we're just gonna resize a little bit. So we start from the very first element of project. We run as long as the incrementer is less than 6, because this is how many elements we have here. 6, actually referring to the array. So this is how many elements we have here. So this is only 6. And then we're gonna increment it by 1 every single time that we do the circle. So remember, it says it was 1 circle, 2nd circle, 3rd circle, 4th circle, 5th circle, and the 6th is not gonna do anything because I is gonna be equals to 6. It's not gonna be less than 6. First circle, we're gonna change the corresponding project element based on the incrementer, gonna be 0 to 5 again. And then we're gonna store the background color of corresponding to colors depending on the value of the incrementer. Okay, great. Now although you could tell me that we could do this on JavaScript, that's actually true. But what if color those projects if I click on a button? So you click on a button and then it's gonna color all of this for you. So let's see how we can do this. First, we need to create a button. So we're gonna go and create a button here. So we're gonna type button. We're gonna give it the ID of color the projects. So color projects, and then say click me. So something fancy that is gonna get the users to click on the button. Okay, we don't want them to miss it. We will, and now we should actually see. We're gonna refresh, and now you see the button over here. Okay, so now we need to get the button when you click on it to do something. Right now it's not doing anything. You click on it, nothing happens. So we need to tell JavaScript to listen. Okay, so we need to tell this button to listen to a potential click by the user. So we need to write some code which gonna, so whenever you click on it, then it's gonna do something. Okay, so let's do this. Now the way we do this is first we need to target the button by its ID. So let's do this. So document, it's the same thing as we saw over here. So get element by ID. Now here, what do we have to do? What do we have to put? That's right, we have to put the color project. And then we're gonna do, and then we're gonna tell it to listen to a click. And this is by using the add event listener. Basically, whatever you do on your computer, whatever you do with interaction, so you press on a keyboard key, or you click on a button, or you scroll up, you scroll down, you resize. All of these are events. Okay, you hover, you move your mouse, you click, you touch on your phone. All of these are user inputs, which are events. Okay, and here we need to make the button to listen to clicks. So we're gonna type here click. We're gonna put a comment. They're gonna write function just like that. They're gonna put false at the end in order to prevent the event to disappear once it's pressed once. Okay. Now we're gonna take all this code and put it right inside the color project. Okay, it's gonna do this formatting for us. Inside this function is where the entire code is gonna run. So whenever we click on this button, then we want to run the code which is inside the function. So whatever is inside this function is going to run. Let's go ahead and try this. Now I'm going to refresh. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click on the button. Boom. We see colors. Okay. Okay, great. So we barely have scratched the surface of what you can do with JavaScript. There are so many things that you can do with JavaScript, and there are so many ways where you can manipulate elements. And also, there are so many ways where you can use events in order to do some very cool things with JavaScript. Now I'm gonna go here and type JavaScript events, and I'm gonna show you a very cool documentation which you can refer to whenever you need any help with JavaScript. So this is MDN Web Docs developed by Mozilla. It's the best documentation for JavaScript. Everything is explained with examples, which you can copy and paste to your document and then run them to see all the results by yourself. So we're going to scroll all the way down and see all the events that are available. So we have, for example, we have key up. So what happens when you press on a button on your keyboard? You can do some cool things. You also have touch start. So when you use a mobile phone, what happens when you tap on the phone and then you begin touching? What happens when you click on an element? So that's something that we look into. What happens when you enter the mouse on an element? And what happens when you leave the element? So we need to fire something. We need to call a function for that. And there are many more events that you can use. Now there are so many events that they're impossible to cover all of them one by one. But let's say that you want to use the event mouse enter. So you click on mouse enter event, and it's going to show you some examples of it. You can scroll down, you see some examples, you see some pre-made HTML, CSS code, and some JavaScript code as well. And you see and here you have a live example of what happens when you perform this event. So Developer Mozilla is a great documentation which you can refer to whenever you struggle with JavaScript. Before I leave, one more thing I would like to show you is w3schools.com. It's another great documentation which you can refer to, which has everything but very simplified. It doesn't have too much text and also has live examples which you can actually try for yourself. So let's click on run here and see what happens when you click on this button. It's going to show the time. We can go back. Here you also have some JavaScript lessons which you can go through one by one just for you to learn the syntax if you come from a different language, or to refer to how to use some programming techniques in order to do certain tasks. And hopefully, if you use those two resources, W3Schools and Mozilla.org, and go through those tutorials, you'll be able to learn JavaScript fast. My name is George Karabasis, from Bridge Gap Academy. I'll see you soon.